Whoa, hey guys, what's up? I fucked up. I just realized that I fucked up really bad. In an earlier episode, I gave Jono a different voice because I thought that he was a different character. Because for some reason they decided that in Joji's section he should go by his original name, Shobana Haruno, whatever, and I mistook him for the mayor character that showed up for like one page earlier on because they had kind of similar names. So whoopsie doodles, I just realised that I fucked that up. So oh well. You probably didn't notice because like 12 people watched this, but there you go. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled George. I asked Bucciolati to brief me on events at the Outer Cross. Shabana Haruno had found Jorge Joestar lying on the road in Morioh badly injured, and had taken him to Arrow Cross House, healed him, and the moment he was better he'd begun solving the mystery, figuring out who'd killed Kira Yoshikage and the Diavolo, and pointing out that the killer had a stand that sped up time, at which point the killer Enrico Pucci stepped out of hiding, so Shabana Haruno had taken a mysterious arrowhead that had been inside Sugimoto Arami's body and stabbed it into his own stand, which evolved it and allowed him to beat Pucci by sending him into a void world where neither life nor death existed, but Jorge Joestar then went on to prove that Shabana Haruno / Giorno Giovanna, again I fucked up, sorry, was actually Diavolo's alternative personality and the same person as the big boss of the Passion family they'd been fighting all along. And the only reason Shabana Haruno was still moving was because he was just a hollowed out skin inhabited by Antonio Torres, a zombie Tsukumajuku had actually brought here from 1904, and who'd been the one who murdered the 3 detectives including Tsukumajuku. And a moment later Shabana Haruno threw Antonio Torres out, repaired Diavolo's body, moved over to it, and in disguise as Diavolo attacked Jorge Joestar, went through the door in the floor of the cube house, entered into an infinite fall loop, and then vanished into thin air. That made sense, I thought. So Jorge Joestar and Shabana Haruno have travelled through time then? Bucciolati didn't seem to follow, so explaining that the cube house, the predecessor to the Arrow Cross house, was actually a time travel device. We'd fallen through that hole and ended up in England in 1920, and after that astronaut Enrico Pucci's stand had suddenly mutated, sped up time and brought Great Britain to the current timeline, but Pucci himself had disappeared, and I guess for some reason he'd gone to Arrow Cross house and murdered 2 very bad men, and that reason was almost certainly something to do with a terrifying vampire named Dio Brando. At which point Bucciolati said, "What? A Dio Brando?" "Yes. Wait. We're currently interrogating Antonio Torres, and we just got the initials DB out of him," he said, and put the phone down a second. Wait, none of this was what I'd meant to ask him about. And then a girl picked up the phone. "Hello? Japanese, George?" It was Sugimoto Arami. Yes." "Where are you?" she asked. "I'm not entirely sure. I'm in Morioh, but there's an upside-down whale swimming across the sky." "Oh, that's just how Morioh is right now. We seem to have been flipped over somehow." "Huh? So the upside-down whales?" "Yes, we've seen octopuses and schools of mackerel. It's pretty nuts. We've even had some sharks." This world might seem totally insane, but it was similar to the real one after all. It just wasn't real. "George," Sugimoto said, "I have a favour to ask." "What?" "I'd like you to find the English Jorge Joestar." "Got it," I said, before I knew it. But it felt so natural. "Thank you. It's a big help." There was a rustling sound as she handed the phone off. "Yo, Bucciolati here. Yeah, Dio Brando's behind everything. Second I said his name, Antonio Torres started crying, and then he fucking pissed himself. Ugh. But some other worrying information came out. According to Antonio Torres, Giorno Giovanna is this Dio Brando's real son, and since he was half Japanese, he helped make the murder displays look more Japanese for Dio. I can't say if that's true or not, but it does make a certain amount of sense. Anyway, I'd love to know where Giorno is, but at present we're trapped in Morioh with no way out. Should we try diving into the cube household, Jorge Joestar?" If they time travelled, would the Morioh residents be able to get back home? Were they time travelling in the first place? No, they were upside down in the ocean. I don't know if you can get back where you started if you're time travelling. "Is that so? Then what should we do? Your phone might stop working again, and this could well be our last chance to contact the outside world." Where I was right now didn't exactly qualify as the outside world, but... Wait a second. You've been trying to call me? And you couldn't get through? Yes, I've tried a number of times, couldn't reach you once. I didn't understand what Narancia was saying, figured there was no point in talking to him. I mean, he said you were in England, but apparently that was actually true. When we were in England you got through? Yes, but since then I haven't been able to get through at all. We can use it within Morioh just fine, but... This might be a hint, I thought. These phones ignored the laws of physics, calling anywhere, even allowing them to call me here in a parallel world that didn't even exist. But there were times when I couldn't get through. What could the cause be? You couldn't get through to anywhere outside Morioh? No, we did. We contacted a number of Passion branches and pulled what strings we could. We can move the military and government to a degree, but that didn't help our situation at all. Then the only place you couldn't reach was England? Apparently. If distance didn't matter, space-time didn't matter, and the dimension of the world didn't matter, what could ever stop these phones getting through? Was there anything special about England in 1920? Well, it wasn't 1920 anymore. Thanks to Poochie, it had gone through the birth and death of the universe 36 times and round up in the present day, I thought. But wait, that actually wasn't correct. Maybe England wasn't technically in modern times. Great Britain existed in the year 2012, but the flow of time in the island might still be 1920. After all, England didn't have the rhinoceros beetle's barrier armour. It had Antonio Torres, a zombie with a conscious mind. While I was watching Poochie fast forward the history of the universe, I'd figured that out. Figured out that consciousness was the point that divided the flow of time. This had nothing to do with any superpowers, it was something we all had every day. And because of that, I knew what was happening with time in Great Britain. To those in England, it was nothing more than a transparent wall, but to Antonio Torres it was his own belly. The world outside was outside to us, but to Antonio Torres it was inside his belly. His perception reversed it. The only thing that counted as outside to Antonio was the island of Great Britain, and he wasn't thinking at all about what lay inside his belly, and even though he could see it, he didn't really feel it. Just like all of us don't really think about, look at, or feel anything in our stomachs unless shit gets really weird. So time within England was still 1920 from 36 universes ago. That's why England was still here, intact. The universe had looped 36 times, and everything outside of Great Britain had died and been born again each time, but Great Britain itself had remained exactly the same, because the sped up time was outside of England, inside of Antonio's stomach. In other words, without meaning to, Antonio Torres had protected Great Britain from the death of the world. His consciousness separated the flow of time. The same way time flowed differently inside and outside us all. But our internal time wasn't always different from the outside of us. We were constantly adjusting our internal time to match the time outside of us. We looked at our watches, made use of calendars, concocted schedules, built routines, and believed we should be doing X at time Y. When talking to people, we matched both subjects and tempo. So many ways we sync our internal time to the world outside, keeping us aligned with our peers. It would be much harder to remain isolated in a world of your own. In a world of my own. Carter just accused me of doing that.
You have a bad habit of not hearing when people speak to you.
Yeah, same thing. Which led me to one conclusion. Thinking hard sped up your internal time, allowing you to use more time than passed outside of you. Concentration or even desperation made time denser and extended it. To be even more precise, the thoughts in your conscious mind extended the time you had. Thoughts that were fun, sad, or flustered were too simple and did less to extend the time. Hence, time flies when you're having fun. Thinking did the opposite. So what powered the reverse effect, Poochie sped up time, was the simplicity of his thoughts. With thinking, simple meant clearing your mind of everything else, which was what happened when you believed wholeheartedly in a single thing. For example, Poochie's belief in God was so absolute, it might well have caused time to speed up like that. Hey, have the phone stopped working again? Hey, Jorge Joestar, are you there? Crap, I was doing it again. But I had the answer. I'd been thinking just now. I'd been thinking earlier in the school grounds. On both occasions my internal time had come unstuck from the time around me, and because of that I'd been unable to hear Kaz and Bucciolati talking to me. This happened all the time, but that same thing was happening on a larger scale to England right now. They'd been able to place a call from Morioh in 2012 to England in 1920, 36 universes ago. But once England came to this world in 2012, they couldn't get through anymore. The gap in time wasn't a problem, but something in the same time but desynced from it couldn't hear a thing. Then if we broke the rhinoceros beetle's armour, the wall made of Antonio Torres, time would start to sync up again, and calls would get through. But was that a good idea? That England belonged in 1920, 36 universes ago. Should we really force it to join the modern world? Hey! Jorge Joestar, are you there? I heard, again. Indecision had made me think too hard again. Yes. At least answer. Sorry, lost in thought. You come up with an answer yet? How can we flip Morioh back over? Oh, I hadn't been thinking about that at all. Couldn't exactly admit that, so I said, and quickly began thinking about it. But given how Morioh was the centre of the world's attention and surrounded by the American army, if it were to suddenly flip over in the middle of the ocean, it would hardly go unnoticed. They'd have started rescue operations immediately. Giant squid live deep in the ocean, but sperm whales range from 1,000 to 3,000 metres. Not a problem for modern submersible technology. But even if a sub found Morioh, the town was protected by the rhinoceros beetle's armour, which was strong enough to deflect missiles. And since we were underwater, they couldn't risk breaking through the barrier anyway. If there was a way to flip us. But there was no technology or machine on Earth that could do that. This wasn't something we could solve with a few cranes. So how had we flipped it in the first place? It's your fault, Bucciolati said. It got dark the moment you crashed here on your way back from Mars. Must have been the shock of impact. Really? When we touched down, Carl's ship had almost entirely burned up, and it was basically just cars and us, so there really shouldn't have been that much of an impact. Did this have something to do with time travelling through the cube house? But Tsuka Bajuka and Shibana Haruno had both used the time device, and nothing happened to Morioh when they did, so that seemed unlikely. What the heck was making Morioh move, anyway? I didn't know, but at face value, Morioh had turned into a giant insect. It appeared to have more than 6 legs and seemed to be alive. It could swim. Based on Nero Island's behaviour, it could walk on land as well. Could it also turn itself upside down? I doubted it. I mean, it was a bug. Bugs never turn themselves over on purpose. That would be a threat to their survival. All insects flipped on their back would immediately put all their attention on trying to flip themselves back over. Morioh must be doing that now. It must be desperately trying to get itself back upright. But it couldn't. What was stopping it? An injury? No, there was no reason why its legs would get hurt underwater. Was there any other explanation? I couldn't think of any. Unless something was on top of Morioh's belly, preventing it from turning over. Was something on top of Morioh? What could be that big? Nero Island was much too small by comparison. It had to be a bigger island. But just before Morioh flipped, we'd seen the islands from the air as we fell, and Nero had been on top of Morioh, with no other islands of any significant size anywhere in sight. But I knew at least one island that didn't exist in this time until later. Great Britain. Was that on top of Morioh's underside? Had Great Britain flipped Morioh in the first place? Could a large rhinoceros beetle take a small one out? Or perhaps Morioh had sensed the large rhinoceros beetle approaching and flipped in an attempt to get away from it. Showing your belly was a common sign of submission, even with bugs. I said, I think England's on top of Morioh, so if we can get England to move, Morioh will probably right itself. From his perspective, this must have come out of nowhere. It took Bucciolati a moment to absorb it, but being an upside-down Morioh must make you fairly used to things like this, because all he said was, Then make it move. But Great Britain's been moving the whole time. Huh? It has. Then it'll be off Morioh soon? It would have been off it ages ago. Great Britain swam across the ocean faster than the speed of sound and was almost at New York. What would happen if Great Britain made land in the United States with Morioh still stuck underneath it? Would it walk across America with Morioh stuck to its belly like a tick? Removed from the water, would Morioh be able to cling to Great Britain upside down? Would it fall off and land on top of New York? Before it even hit land, the water would get shallow. I wasn't quite sure where Morioh was, but the water would clearly stop being deep enough long before Great Britain came ashore. So would we get caught on the seafloor? If we did, would Great Britain run us over, trampling us under all its legs? All these sounded terrible, and just before cars dragged me into this parallel world, funny and the funniest made, we'd been within sight of New York. Uh-oh. This could be really bad. But should I really tell Bucciolati how bad it was? Was there anything people here could do about it? Nope, not a thing. We'd thought Kira Yoshikage was moving Morioh, but he was dead and the bug was still going, which meant that theory was highly suspect. At most, Kira Yoshikage's emotions influenced Morioh, or Kira Yoshikage being in trouble and Morioh starting to move just coincidentally happened at the same time. After all, there were 4 rhinoceros beetles. It seemed like a real stretch to assume all 4 started moving at the same time for 4 completely different reasons. But what the heck should I do? I couldn't just say nothing and let what happened happen. Should I tell them to run away, even if they have to time travel? Yeah, as a last resort, sure. Time travel should be avoided as much as possible, but shit could start going down any second now. I told him to gather as many Morioh citizens in the Arrow Cross house as he could. They might be able to have them all time travel, and if not, Arrow Cross might be able to handle the impact of whatever was about to happen. But Bucciolati said, "Oh, did I not mention? When those arrowheads came out of Sugimoto Remi, the Arrow Cross house turned back into Cube House. So it has no way in or out, no doors, no windows, just 4 walls. We can't bring anyone here and have no idea how to get out ourselves. Remy herself does a door, and she can steer the Cube House around, but it rolls like a die, so that would expose anyone stored under the Arrow Cross. Their Morioh was entirely on its own, and only the people inside the Cube House had any way of escaping. Even their stands couldn't help. There are no stands that can turn flipped land back over. We can roll the Cube House, sew things with a needle, make phones, replay human memories as holograms, spread mass delusions to large crowds, and have little drag queens kick some bullets around. All useless here, right?" Why little drag queens? Whatever. Point is, he was right. None of those sounded like they could save Morioh. I had to hurry. This could start happening at any moment. "Bucciolati," I said, and then explained what I knew and what I feared. What are we supposed to do with that?" I didn't have an answer. "Hey, Jorge Joestar," Bucciolati said. "Get England off us. We're gangsters. We'll end up okay somehow. But the people outside the Cube House are civilians. You've got to save them somehow." Exactly. I hung up and turned to Kaz. "We've got to get back to England." Kaz grinned.
That's what I brought you here for. Think, detective. While you figure out a way to get back to England, I'll entertain our guest.
Entertain? What guest? I looked up, and someone came down out of the moonless, starless sky and landed in the darkness of the schoolyard. From what I could see in the darkness, he had long hair and was half naked.
Another me,
Kaz said. There was a pop, and it knew Kaz's entire body lit up. Not just one colour either. Intricate light patterns roamed the surface of his skin. It was clearly Kaz.
Light mode.
Kaz chuckled.
Interesting. Seems like he's become the ultimate thing too, and wants to see how that mode works in a fight.
Kaz took a step forward, and the other Kaz held his hand up, palms towards him. Kaz stopped. The other Kaz smiled, and still glowing, he straightened up, let the smile fade, and put his back into a punch that hit only air. Zoom! Brilliant lights danced. His arms spinning, he raised himself up, and then punched to the side. A swirl of light spread out around him.
What?
Kaz said, not getting it. But I did. This was a dance. Kaz had wanted to see how to fight with light, and the other Kaz was showing him without the need to actually exchange blows. Sha! Pa-pa-pa-pa! Boom! Sha! Pa-pa-pa-pa! Boom! Firing flames of light, Kaz moved like a black belt, and the light's movements gradually changed. At first they burned bright and aggressive, but then they started shimmering up against Kaz, as if protecting him. Then Kaz made the lights expand, growing more intricate, and the shimmering lights caressing his body began flowing in reverse as well, and suddenly there were 2 of him, and he began moving still faster, making more copies of himself. Glowing Kaz flowers blooming in the schoolyard that exploded, scattering in all directions, or flitted at random, each showing a different style of martial arts, each wrapped in different lights, firing lights all around. Then the lights grew even brighter, and the variations increased in number, and the array of copies added a 3rd dimension, and soon Buddha Gaoku Academy's campus was filled with blinding light cast by a giant mandala pyramid that made me forget to breathe. It was such a spectacle that I forgot to think. But beside me, Kaz said,
I've already understood his point, so why does he not stop?
I think he's not just doing it for you. He's doing this for himself as well. Like something he needs to express, something he needs to leave behind.
This is a parallel world, it isn't real. Nothing will remain, so how can this have meaning?
Of course it has meaning. Don't be stupid, Cars.
Huh?
Cars looked back at the 3D light temple, a tower of light suddenly growing in the middle of pitch-black Moriohs, drawing people in, and cried a crowd had assembled. Some were just here for the fireworks, completely unaware this was an ultimate being burning his life out. Then the light copies rejoined together as one Cars, and he shouted at the sky.
Mere moments ago I intended to take the sole chance I had of killing myself, but I came to understand why I ran across the backside of Mars for so long, and why despite the stifling feelings boiling up inside, I am equally filled with joy. My flesh may not be able to die, but my life is as fragile as it was before, and can be snuffed out so easily. You, who are another me, you are not special. You share the same sadness I feel, but that is a treasure. Rejoice, Cars. You too can suffer.
The Cars next to me didn't visibly react. I couldn't read his expression at all, but he watched closely and thinking, holding the gaze of the dancing light Cars. His thoughts were so deep he didn't hear me or Cars when we spoke to him. I didn't want to interrupt that, but we were in sort of a hurry, so I said again, Cars, I thought of a way to get back to England.